So with all the kind of anyways, with all the hatred and everything else going around, it kind of can be easy to hate a certain person because that kind of person discriminated against you. It's not right, but some people do fall into that. I had seen this post on Tumblr and I was thinking about it today. I saw it a while ago, so I don't know if I can find it to put in the description, but it doesn't. But anyways, it was someone asking a trans person on Tumblr if they hated cis people. And the person said, no, of course not. Because, just because people who hurt me were cis, doesn't mean that all cis people are bad. In case people who don't understand, cis is someone who identifies with the gender they were assigned at birth. So, where a transgender person will say that when they're born, the doctor's like, oh, it's a girl. But they're like, later in their life, like, no, I'm not. Um, as this person is like, oh, it's a girl, and they're like, yep, I am. So, anyways, so that is like talking about how many of their friends, their family, all these people that they care about in their lives that are important to them are cis. So no, of course they don't hate cis people, because just because someone in a category is bad doesn't mean everyone is. And I remember this radio show, because there was this local station on AM radio when I was younger. I don't know if they still do, that would still do radio shows. Like, they'd have a script and do all that other stuff. It's outdated in the world of television. But anyways, when I was little, my mom would sometimes have it playing in the kitchen, and she would just leave it on and would get to the shows. And sometimes I'd listen to the stories, and I remember there was this one. It was kind of like, a story within a story, where it was this grandfather telling this story to his grandson about him being during World War II. And anyway, so it goes into the whole story about him and his friend, and it shows, the solidarity and how close they were and how that guy saved his life and everything else. And then he ended up dying because of Pearl Harbor or the Japanese or something. And then the little boy asks the grandfather at the end if he hated the Japanese for killing his best friend. And he said no. And he's like, well, why not? He's like, because my best friend was Japanese. And it kind of like, it makes you think. And that kind of same thing, like, just because, someone in a group hurt you does not mean the entire group is bad. So it's kind of interesting, this kind of makes you think sort of thing. I don't know why I just remembered that story, and then remembering that story reminded me of that post. Like, I remember listening to that story when I was like, what, 6 or 7? Maybe 8? I don't know. Anyways, I was young. It was in my old house when I was in those years, so. Anyways, so it's interesting that people can feel hatred for people, like, saying the whole thing about, like, all black people are robbers just because most of the people who are in jail are criminals or whatever, and just because there's a high demographic of black people in jail, but that's not necessarily because, black people are going to commit crimes or whatever. It's, a bad system. And just because, white, cis, heterosexual males or whatever, have been the cause of a lot of problems, doesn't mean that they should be all of them should be hated. And that's something I see a lot on, like, Tumblr and whatever, like, people treating them like shit because, oh, you're all privileged and you don't have to deal with hardship, and it's, people like you who fuck me up and everything else. It's like, I didn't choose to be that any more than you chose you didn't choose to be not that. So you shouldn't, treat them like shit. Yes, they have privilege, and, if they're, not recognizing that, then okay, but just treating them like shit because of that fact and that fact alone is not okay. Okay, this video is a little bit disorganized, but I should be going to bed right now anyways, so thanks for listening. Bye. Okay, click.